What's up, Unleashed Humans? On this episode, we will be discussing what creatine is, what it does, why people use it, what the risks are, some of the common myths surrounding creatine, how much you should take, when you should take it, and what company I suggest you buy from. So first off, most people don't know what creatine actually is. Creatine is actually naturally found in our body, specifically found in our muscle and brain tissue, and 95% of creatine is found in skeletal muscle mass as fast twitch type 2 muscles, which are known for explosive and fast movements like punching, jumping, kicking, and heavy weight training. Creatine's primary function is to recycle ATP, aka adenosine triphosphate, which is the molecule that gives our cells energy. The way that creatine creates energy is it converts ADP, aka adenosine diphosphate, into ATP, which again is energy for our cells and tissues. In order to convert ADP to ATP, creatine is in the form of phosphocreatine, which gives ADP one more phosphate group to create Tri-phosphate, aka energy. Creatine is endogenously created in the body via the liver and kidneys at about 1 gram per day. Now, most of the creatine in our bodies is stored inside skeletal muscle and the rest inside blood, the brain, and other tissues. You can increase your creatine by taking an exogenous creatine in the form of supplements, or you can eat more meats, as animal proteins have the most creatine content by far. Foods like milk, red wine, white meat, fish, and mollusks usually have the most creatine. Thus, it's important to note that typically vegetarians have less muscle creatine than non-vegetarians. But vegetarians can always up their creatine via supplementation. It is also important to note that cooking time, the type of meat, and muscle site influence the amount of creatine someone can consume after ingestion. For example, to retain the most creatine, do not overcook your meats, but rather leave some of the meat tender and somewhat pink. If you make sure you know your source of meat, undercooking your meat will be just fine. Trust me, it's really not that big of a deal. Now, let's move on to what creatine's used for typically. Creatine is mostly used as an athletic performance supplement. It has been the most popular dietary supplement in the sports world and has over $400 million in sales each year. It's a pretty hefty bill. Its primary purpose is to increase phosphocreatine levels in muscle and to increase free creatine, which will postpone muscle fatigue and soreness. It has been shown to increase maximum power and performance in weightlifting. So it is usually best in the setting of high-intensity exercises and power movements. So it can be said that it isn't as great for endurance-based exercises or long-distance activities like running, bicycling, or swimming. Doesn't mean it isn't good, but it's typically better for more power movements. What is interesting is that athletes report to use it for more in the improvement of performance, and non-athletes report using it to improve appearance of their bodies. In other words, non-athletes use it so that they can sculpt their bodies to a more aesthetically pleasing look, while athletes use it for more of a performance and getting stronger. Creatine has been known to increase size of muscles and improve muscle contractions. Just as an anecdotal example from my own life, I recently started taking creatine again, and I dramatically increased strength and size by consistently taking it each day I worked out. From December 2018 to now, which is May 4th, 2019 of this recording, I have gained nearly 20 pounds of lean muscle mass. But remember, I also trained and ate properly to gain weight, okay? And remember, The key is that I was consistent. I didn't go on and off, and I didn't slack on my diet or my workouts. I was consistent. Now, studies have shown that the creatine's effects are actually magnified by increasing your glycemic load. In other words, by adding a little bit of carbohydrates to your diet, it will actually help the absorption of creatine. Now, I don't want you to go crazy overboard and having rice or breads or anything like that. Just add a little bit here and there. I don't have you eating donuts or anything super crazy like that. By just adding in maybe some sweet potatoes or anything else like vegetables, that can actually help with creatine absorption. Now, the other benefits of creatine that most people don't talk about, aside from strength, performance, and getting bigger, are things like enhancing cognitive performance that most people don't actually know. Now, recently, creatine has actually been said that it might be a form of a nootropic to aid in neuroprotection. In other words, it's good for your brain. Studies have proposed that oral creatine may improve short-term memory and intelligence in healthy individuals. And a study in young volunteers had participants consume oral creatine monohydrate for 4 weeks. In these participants, they found a significant increase in creatine content in their brains. What was interesting is not only that it crossed the blood-brain barrier quite easily, but also the creatine concentrated mostly in the thalamus of the brain, responsible for motor and sensory input of the body. You see, creatine protects from lack of oxygen by making sure that brain tissues are adequately supplied with energy in the form of ATP to prevent structural damage to brain tissues. Another study in young adult females investigated the impact of creatine supplementation on cognitive functions in both vegetarians and omnivores. Now, compared to the placebo group, 5 days of supplementation with creatine led to significant improvements in memory. This improvement in brain function was more pronounced in vegetarians. Another study investigated the effect of 6-week-long creatine supplementation in young vegetarians. In comparison with placebo, creatine induced significant improvements in intelligence and working memory, with both functions depending on the speed of information processing. This study showed that brain performance is dependent on the level of energy available in the brain, which can be beneficially influenced by creatine supplementation. Now, creatine supplementation has also been shown to be beneficial in the treatment of PTSD patients and relief from symptoms and improved sleep quality. Studies of creatine functions in the central nervous system underline creatine's therapeutic potential in neurodegenerative diseases, since creatine supplementation can reduce the loss of neuronal cells. Also, animal models studies have demonstrated that the size of creatine stores in the brain play an important role in Alzheimer's disease, and creatine supplementation was found to be beneficial in animal models of Parkinson's disease as well, a rationale for using creatine in these conditions. Now, I just mentioned what the benefits of creatine were, but just as something as healthy as water can be toxic to us, creatine can be as well. So I'm now going to cover the potential risks and dangers. Now, I will say that creatine monohydrate has been shown to be extremely safe in normal, healthy populations, and the chance of serious complications is very, very low unless you are inappropriately dosing creatine or if you have a serious kidney or liver condition. So let's dive right into the possible side effects. Now, one of the first side effects of creatine, which will almost 100% occur, is weight gain. So it is either a positive or negative effect depending on what your goals are. Now, if you're a female who wants to lose weight, initially you'll probably gain weight, but the thing is it's lean muscle mass. So this is because creatine naturally retains a lot of water inside of your muscles, so don't worry. Like I said, it's muscle mass, along with water that you're gaining, not fat. So really, this is actually a good thing. It also is one of the main reasons why people take creatine is to gain weight. So if you're a woman who has been trying to gain weight, you have issues trying to get muscle or just to be bigger in general, you can try creatine and it might actually help. Also, with men typically are always trying to put on muscle. They're trying to improve women. Guys, creatine is amazing for that. Initially, you might seem like you're bloated, but the more consistent you are with your lifts and your nutrition, the creatine will actually put on really nice muscle and actually eventually will start shredding that muscle a little bit and make you a little bit more defined. Trust me, I have done this in the past and it worked out really well for me. Now, one claim suggests that creatine can dehydrate you because your body is retaining so much water, which intuitively makes sense. However, researchers have since then disproved this theory. A 3-year study of college athletes found that those taking creatine had fewer cases of dehydration, muscle cramps, or muscle injuries than those not taking creatine. They also missed fewer sessions due to illness or injury, those taking creatine, that is. Now, one study examined creatine use during exercise in hot weather, which can accelerate cramping and dehydration. During a 35-minute cycling session in 99-degree temperature Fahrenheit, creatine had no adverse effects compared to a placebo. Okay. Now, further examination via blood test also confirmed no difference in hydration or electrolyte levels, which plays a key role in muscle cramps. In other words, they tested electrolytes in the blood, and there was no difference when taking creatine, which then would say that it didn't affect hydration or dehydration. Okay. Now, the most conclusive research has been conducted in individuals undergoing hemodialysis, a medical treatment that may cause muscle cramps. Researchers noticed that creatine reduced cramping incidence by 60%. Now, another side effect or theory suggests that kidney and liver dysfunction may occur while taking creatine. Now, the reason why this was thought an issue is that when creatine breaks down, it is formed into a compound called creatinine, which occurs from normal muscle catabolism, aka cleaning up old muscle cells. Creatinine is naturally elevated in the blood when there is more creatine intake or after a workout. Well, most kidney and liver problems are diagnosed based off high levels of creatinine in the blood, because to eliminate creatinine, it must pass through the kidneys. However, just because your blood creatinine levels are high does not mean your liver or kidneys are being harmed. Okay. Now, a long-term study of college athletes found no side effects related to liver or kidney function. Other studies measuring biological markers in the urine also found no difference after creatine ingestion. One of the longest studies to date, lasting 4 years, similarly concluded that creatine has no negative side effects. However, I will say, if you have a known kidney or liver condition, I would stay away from creatine for the time being, unless told by your doctor or practitioner that it is okay to supplement creatine. Again, remember, if you have a condition, ask your doctor first. It's very, very important. Next, if you are taking certain medications or over-the-counter medications, you may want to be careful when taking creatine. These are typically medications for liver and kidney conditions. So if you're taking medications like cyclosporine, aminoglycosides, gentamicin, tobramycin, anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, and many other drugs, then you will want to avoid creatine regularly. You should also be careful supplementing creatine if you're pregnant, if you have heart disease, cancer, if you're breastfeeding, or any other serious condition. Again, consult your doctor or family practitioner, okay? Another claim has proposed that creatine leads to compartment syndrome, in which either your arm or leg starts to generate too much pressure inside the muscles, tissues, or from the bloodstream. Although one study found that an increase in muscle pressure during 2 hours of heat training occurred, it resulted mainly from heat and exercise-induced dehydration and not from creatine. Now, another claim is that creatine might increase your risk for rhabdomyolysis, a condition in which muscle breaks down and leaks proteins into your bloodstream. However, this idea is not supported by any evidence, so don't believe all of the nonsense out there. Now, the myth originated because a marker in your blood called creatine kinase increases with creatine supplements. However, this slight increase is quite different from the large amount of creatine kinase associated with rhabdomyolysis. Interestingly, some experts even suggest creatine may protect against compartment syndrome, which is very interesting. Now, there's also a misconception that creatine is only meant for adult men, thus stating that children, adolescents, and women should avoid it. However, this is far from the truth. There is zero research suggesting that creatine is dangerous for younger populations and women. In fact, there are numerous medical interventions in which doctors gave both kids and adults creatine who are suffering with neuromuscular diseases and muscle loss or muscle wasting. Studies have shown that creatine is extremely valuable in people with muscle wasting diseases and apparent systemic muscle weakness disorders. Now, with all of these quote-unquote side effects being stated that I just said, creatine has been used for over a century with over 500 studies to support its safety and efficacy. It is also one of the cheapest, most effective, and safest supplements available on the market. However, again, just remember, make sure you aren't mixing it with any drugs or taking it if you have a serious illness, a kidney and liver disorder, cancer, heart disease, or pregnancy. So again, remember, talk to your doctor, okay? Okay, so before I tell you which creatine supplement and how much I am going to tell you to take, there are many different types of creatine, and most of them are very unnecessary and marketing ploys. So before I list them off, I will tell you most of these supplements, these creatine supplements, are, like I said, marketing ploys to make you think that absorption and efficacy is more advanced than its predecessor, creatine monohydrate. However, I will tell you right now, creatine monohydrate is the most researched supplement in history and works just as well as it ever has. It has been proven safe, effective, and it is the gold standard in which all creatine supplements are judged, and it is usually the cheapest form of creatine by far. Okay? So, I'm going to go down the list of types of creatine supplements. Okay? So, the first creatine supplement in another form is called effervescent creatine, which is made up of creatine monohydrate, citric acid, and bicarbonate, which is supposed to increase retention of creatine. However, research shows it is no greater than creatine monohydrate's retention. Okay. Second is creatine nitrate, which is creatine bound to a nitrate group and has been said to be 10 times more soluble than creatine monohydrate, which can help people who have stomach issues if they have stomach issues when they take creatine monohydrate, which, by the way, isn't too often. But if there is, for some reason, you have stomach issues when taking creatine monohydrate, then try creatine nitrate. Creatine nitrate will not outperform creatine monohydrate in power or strength gains, however. Now, third is creatine citrate, which is bonded with citric acid and claims that it makes it more absorbable. Again, total bullshit. Research shows it is no greater than creatine monohydrate. Fourth is creatine ethyl ester. This might be the worst form of creatine, as it is almost completely degraded as creatinine in the intestines, making it far inferior than creatine monohydrate. The funny thing is that creatine ethyl ester is touted as the most advanced creatine, and it drastically increases uptake when in fact it's totally the opposite. When you're drinking it, you're actually only really drinking creatinine, okay? Because it's already been broken down. So you're not really even taking in creatine. So it's a waste of money. Fifth is buffered creatine, aka crealkaline. This creatine is paired with sodium bicarbonate, aka baking soda. Its claim is that since it is paired with baking soda, it will make the creatine more basic so that it can pass through the stomach acid unscathed, and thus you won't need to take as much creatine, and it will increase the amount of creatine in your body. However, studies show this to be false. Creatine monohydrate is actually much better because stomach acid slows its conversion to creatinine, which is what we want from a creatine supplement, aka slowing the process of creatine degradation. Also, this type of creatine is still less effective for growth and strength compared to creatine monohydrate. Sixth is magnesium creatine chelate. This is one of the newer forms of creatine, and some studies show this form might enhance uptake of creatine, but performance studies have yet to show it being better than creatine monohydrate. Seventh is creatine pyruvate. Some research shows that creatine pyruvate was more effective than creatine citrate, which from other research, creatine citrate is close to creatine monohydrate in performance. This is likely because creatine pyruvate has shown to increase plasma creatine levels more than monohydrate, but did not show evidence for better absorption compared to monohydrate. Eighth is creatine malate. This creatine is bound to malic acid. Not too much research has been shown that this creatine is superior to monohydrate, but malic acid has actually been shown to have performance-enhancing properties on its own. And ninth and last is creatine hydrochloride, aka concrete. Now, hydrochloride supplements are always touted to have better absorption in the GI tract. Most hydrochlorides bond well with their amines, however, but creatine hydrochloride at the moment doesn't show enough research to override creatine monohydrate in the realm of both performance and absorption. So, in a nutshell, you should just stick to what has worked for 100 years. Just get creatine monohydrate. It works. It is cheap. There are no gimmicks. There's no shiny whistles. Just results. Don't buy into all of the new marketing stuff saying that there's better absorption. It really does not matter if it absorbs more. Creatine monohydrate will always work because it's always worked before. It's really not that hard to follow. Now, let's move on to how much creatine you can take daily and in which form you should take creatine. Now, as a common myth, first off, for the longest time, people said you need to do a loading phase of creatine, meaning that you should take 20 grams of creatine a day in the first week. I'm going to tell you right now, this is absolutely false. It is totally unnecessary to do this. I have never done this in my entire life, and I would very much advise against it just because it is a waste of creatine and it is too much to take in at one given moment. Even if creatine is very safe, it is totally unneeded. Therefore, I take 5 grams of creatine daily, and I typically take it 5 times out of the week, even on non-training days. You don't need to take it every single day, as your body will start storing some of the creatine from the previous day. I myself, as stated earlier, have gained 20 pounds of muscle in a 5-month period by just consuming 5 grams of creatine a day, eating a well-balanced diet, and weight training at least 4 to 5 times a week, okay? There's not much that goes into it than that. Supplementing and training does not have to be complicated. It's actually quite easy. If you stay consistent with your nutrition, with your supplementation, and your training, you will reap the rewards. It's really that simple. Again, guys, I cannot stress enough how key consistency is. People give up too quick. They don't stay with the routine, and that's when they start slacking off, and then they get upset when they don't get results, and they go back to their coach, and they say, why am I not getting results? Well, it's like, dude, did you listen to me and follow my directions? I've been there before. I know it works. So if you guys stay consistent with your training regimen and your nutrition and lifestyle, I'm telling you right now, you will reap the rewards. Now, you're probably wondering what form I consume my creatine in. Well, I consume my creatine in powdered form because I find it very easy to pop in 1 scoop of 5 grams of creatine into my mouth, and I swish it around with water and then I swallow. The good thing is creatine has no flavor or odor, which makes it very nice to add to smoothies or just swallow it with water like I do. Now, most creatine in the form of creatine monohydrate will be flavorless and odorless, but some of the newer ones might have different things in it, okay? So things like hydrochloride in creatine may actually make it taste a little bit nasty. But like I said, if you do creatine monohydrate, it has no flavor, okay? Now, I like using powder for a few reasons. First, you don't have to swallow pills, which will add up to about 3 to 5 pills to equal 5 grams of creatine. However, pills are typically better for traveling if that suits your fancy. Second, powder is usually cheaper than both pill and liquid form of creatine. And third, as I mentioned before, it can be mixed into anything as it has no flavor. Now, I must mention that you should never consume creatine in liquid form because creatine is actually unstable in an aqueous solution, which means you are basically just consuming creatinine and not creatine, okay? What I mean by that is when you put creatine into that solution, it will come and it will transform into creatinine, and then you're just drinking creatinine at that point, okay? Now you're probably thinking, well, when do I take creatine? When should I take it? Well, the answer is simple. You can take creatine either before or after workout. Both are totally cool. I typically take 5 grams before my workout if I can. Otherwise, I'll just take my 5 grams after the workout. You can also take 2.5 grams before the workout and then 2.5 grams after. Totally up to you. But honestly, I wouldn't stress too much about it, either before or after. Really just choose what fits you best and what works in the moment, okay? So now that you're a pro with creatine, you're probably asking, well, which company do I buy from? Well, great question. Now, if you know me, you know that I like taking supplements that give you exactly what you're looking for in its purest form. No extra fillers, emulsifiers, artificial flavors, coatings, or magnesium stearate that is typically found in supplement capsules. No, I always make sure I get just the supplement that I want, and that's it. Now, for that reason, I have always trusted bulksupplements.com for nearly 10 years for my go-to supplier of pure powders and proteins. If you are just starting out, I would suggest getting a 100-gram bag of creatine monohydrate micronized powder from bulksupplements.com. I would also advise buying straight from their website and not from amazon.com. This is because when it comes to buying supplements and food products online, I always want to go straight through the company itself. You literally never know what can happen through third-party websites these days, even through Amazon. Now, I posted the link to bulksupplements.com, creatine monohydrate, in the show notes if you want to click over to their website for easy, quick ordering right away. Now, just an FYI, a 100-gram bag of creatine monohydrate from bulksupplements.com is only $11. This means if you're taking 5 grams per day at 5 days a week, this bag will last you approximately 1 month or 20 days if you discount the weekends. This means you're paying roughly 55 cents per 5 grams of creatine, which is $2.75 a week, which equates to $11 a month, just for you analytical people out there wanting to know cost. Now, with all the basics covering creatine, it can be said that creatine in the form of creatine monohydrate is an amazing and extremely safe supplement in normal, healthy populations. It has numerous health benefits aside from gaining mass and strength, as we mentioned earlier, We discussed how it works in the body and what the physiological ramifications are for it, working inside our muscles and tissues. We also discussed the types of creatine, the forms of creatine, how to take it, when to take it, and what company I trust for most of my creatine and my other supplements. So with this knowledge, you can now spread the word and the usage of creatine in your daily life. So you can go crush your goals and get stronger. Now, this information is useless unless you act upon it or help someone else you know in need. So feel free to share this episode with friends and family who you feel should hear this. It honestly may just change their life. Well, that is it from me on this episode. If you enjoyed today's show, I would be so appreciative if you left a review and a rating and even shared it with your friends and family, like I mentioned. I put a ton of time into making these episodes, and it would mean a ton to me if you gave me some feedback. Now, if you want to reach out to me personally, I would love to help wherever I can. You can message me on Instagram at @TheUnleashedHuman, and I will personally help you out with anything you have going on, whether that's losing weight, better sleep, better headspace, getting stronger in the gym, cleaning up your diet, or even just to say hello. I'm always here to help out whenever you need. Now, lastly, if you haven't already, you can go right now to get my free book. It's totally free, no shipping, no waiting. It's emailed directly to you. All you have to do is go to www.theunleashedhuman.com/unleashed to get your free copy of The Unleashed Human. Now, until then, take care of yourself and always strive to become an unleashed human. Talk soon. Bye.